So with there being over 100 Pokemon TCG sets in total, honestly the title of picking the best overall one can be pretty tough, with some sets offering a ton to the competitive metagame, like Stormfront that had Gyarados, Gengar and Machamp in, or you have sets like Evolving Skies, which offers an extreme pack opening experience as people chase the big hitters, like Moonbreon for example. For me though, it's an easy choice. There is a set that has had a ridiculous impact on the competitive metagame, featuring main staples in multiple tier 1 decks, while also offering a pack opening experience like no other set has, and likely ever will again, and I bet I can convince you on it too. Let's have a look. In my opinion, there are 3 pillars that make up a good set, right? Playability, which the player base mostly care about, the opening pack experience, you know, for the pack rippers, and the value of the cards afterwards for the collectors. Let's look at playability wise first. So normally, to be honest, Pokemon sets are quite bloated, meaning the pool of competitive cards in a given set can be pretty low. Sets like Stormfront or Guardians Rising, who are often in a discussion for best sets of all time, only really have, 20 or so cards maximum that impact the metagame in any kind of way. My set though, my suggestion, well, 24% of the cards in that set saw some high level play, including a World Championship win and second place as well, with a cheeky little Internats win as well. Let's take a look. My set, of course, is Celebrations. Flying Pikachu VMAX is the obvious standout here. This card won NAIC 2022 in dramatic fashion. Not many people saw it coming. Its max balloon attack would deal 160 damage and make itself immune to damage from basic Pokemon next turn. This was actually pretty helpful against decks like Reggie's, who would only attack with basic Pokemon. What made Flying Pikachu really good though was slicing through the lightning weak Pokemon at the time, like Palkia V-Star, which was widely regarded as the best deck in format at the time. Subspace Swirl would deal 60 plus 20 damage for each bench Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's, so topping out at 260 was huge. Add a Choice Belt in there and you was getting at 290, which was enough to KO all V-Star Pokemon, all for 2 water energy as well, very efficient. And bear in mind, you could accelerate those water energy with Melanie or even Palkia itself, since its V-Star power would let you accelerate 3 water energy from your discard pile to your water Pokemon in any way you like once per game. So powering up Subspace Swirl was very easy. But it was also easy to power up other attackers, like Inteleon, whose Aqua Bullet attack would deal 120 damage to the active and a 20 damage snipe. This was, pretty good, but it wasn't the main reason why you play it though, since its Shady Dealings ability would let you grab any 2 trainer cards you liked from your deck when you evolved into it, giving you unparalleled levels of consistency. And to make it even better, the Drizzle had the same ability but for 1 trainer instead. And with Scoop Up Net being in format, this would let you reuse the Shady Dealings line over and over and over again, meaning Palkia was a constant menace. You could even use Star Portal to power up Raging Greninja, so it could attack with Moonlight Shuriken, which would deal 90 damage to any 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. Nasty work. This is where Flying Pikachu really shone, because it ran through Palkia decks like a hot knife through butter, and with Arceus V-Star to power it up via Trinity Nova, it was light work to get set up. This led Flying Pikachu VMAX to win NAIC 2023, and then with the addition of Hisuian Decidueye to bop all the other Arceus V-Stars, it would win 2022 Worlds, where it met itself in the final as a mirror match. So already crazy results for Celebrations. But it doesn't stop there, because we also had Kyogre. This was one of the hardest cards to use realistically, but it had a silly win condition that quite honestly, your opponent couldn't really stop. Aqua Storm will let you discard the top 5 cards of your deck, and for each energy card you discarded in that way, you would deal 50 damage to 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So I was just saying about how good Moonlight Shuriken was from Raging Greninja, how about almost tripling that damage from it? So now, as you can imagine, this would take some work, since unless you wanted to just gamble randomly using Aqua Storm, you would have to manipulate your deck so it was just basic energy cards. So with that in mind, Aqua Storm was often the game-ending attack that you would use to take 4 prizes to close games out.
1, 2, 3, 4. That's it, that's game,
there you go, that's game. It does take 2 prizes.
Wow!
So Kyogre was used in the Lost Box archetype, where you would use Comfey to get cards in your Lost Zone via its ability flower selecting, and Chorus Experiment 2. Once you started to get cards in the Lost Zone, you could now use Spit Innocently from Cramorant for free, letting you take extra cheeky prizes early on. However, when you had 7 and 10 cards in your Lost Zone, this was when the big thing started to happen. Since when you had 10, you could now use Sableye Lost Mine attack for full effect, letting you spread 12 damage counters for one single energy. Same, by the way. And when you got to 7 cards in the Lost Zone, you could now use Mirage Gate, which would let you accelerate 2 different basic energies from your deck to your Pokemon in any way you like. And this is how you would power up Kyogre to use Aqua Storm. So as a Kyogre player, you would always have to keep tabs of your switching cards, so you could always get Kyogre into the active, energy recyclers, so you could get energy back into your deck, and also have enough basic energy so you could get 300 Kyogre, and enough in your deck so you could discard them to win. All while realistically having no other cards in your deck apart from energy, so you was guaranteed to hit them. This was a hard task, but it was something that would win games on its own if you was able to pull it off. This led to Aqua Storm winning a Champions League event in Kyoto, the Peoria Regionals, Pittsburgh Regionals, and the 2023 World Championship in the Junior Division as well. And while we're here, the Groudon 2 also saw a little bit of play in Lost Box decks, since its attack was basically the same, but instead of hitting the bench, it would hit the active for big damage. And we still have 3 top tier cards to look at from the Celebration set, but how about we move on to the next pillar, the opening experience, and after that we'll come back to those cards. With the main set of Celebrations only featuring 25 cards, with 9 big hitters like Pikachu, Full Art Pikachu, the rest of the Pikachu Vs, Zamazenta, Zacian, and Professor's Research, this meant you were very likely to have a pack that had a good pull in there, which, let's be honest, we can all appreciate. It made opening packs super fun because you knew deep down the chances of you getting something good were pretty high. That, however, is only half the story, since Celebrations also had a mini set inside of it, the Classic Collection. The Classic Collection was a subset of 25 cards from all eras of the Pokemon TCG that tell the story of our 25-year-old metagame. This right here is amazing, and even for a 13-year veteran of the game like myself, I found myself learning about the history of the game just from these cards. And this was actually one of the reasons why I started making historic content, because I thought I can't be the only ones who didn't know about the insane backstories about these cards, so I started making videos about them. Like how Xerneas was the face of fairy typing when it was first introduced to the Pokemon TCG, or how Reshiram and Zekrom changed the metagame overnight as soon as they was released, or how Magma Groudon was the only deck to this day that has won all 3 age divisions at the World Championship, or how Clefbot was single-handedly the saving grace during the TCG's darkest metagame when it was filled with hand disruption left, right and centre, or how Claydol was one of the strongest, if not the strongest support Pokemon of all time, where often games were decided by who got their first Claydol setup, or Luckchomp, many people's favourite deck of all time. Or even the Mewtwo Wars, where games were decided by realistically who could keep attacking with Mewtwo the longest. These are all history lessons that for the most part will be new to most of the player base, and it really opens the door about learning about our amazing past. And on a side note, the code cards from Celebrations are also very handy, since because it's the easiest set to finish on Pokemon TCG Live, every other pack you open when you've already completed the set results in big credits for yourself, so even the code cards are good. But not even just from a competitive player standpoint, but the Classic Collection isn't just good for the competitive players to learn, it's also good for the collectors, since now you are able to open a Fire-type Gardevoir or a Rocket Zapdos is such a rush that can't be replicated from other sets, especially if this is your first time seeing said cards. And don't forget about the Kanto first partner Pokemon as well. Being able to rip cards from all eras of the Pokemon TCG, in my opinion, clears the opening experience for me, and it doesn't even come close. So real quick, I have to give a shout out to this video sponsor, Xatu Games. Xatu Games were big boys in the board game space, but recently they have been making noise in the TCG scene as well, with some seriously competitive prices. And you know you're in safe hands there at Xatu, because the one and only Mike Ellis works there, and you should recognise him from other Pokemon EU streams as well. As well as having competitive pricing, all UK orders include a fun pack, whether the order includes English, Japanese or Korean products as well. They even have a revamped accessories section, which is searchable by colour, making matching your deck box and sleeves very easy. So if you want to get your hands on any TCG product or board games, make sure to check the link in the description and get to Zartu. Thank you very much to Zartu for sponsoring this video. So how about we finish off looking at the other metagame destroyers from Celebrations then? Let's look at Mew. Celebrations Mew had the Mysterious Tail ability, which would let you look at the top 6 cards of your deck when Mew is in the active. Then you could take an item card you find there, put it in your hand. As you can imagine, this being able to find Battle VIP Pass, Ball Search or even Cross Switches was insane for a ton of decks, and that resulted in Mew seeing a lot of play. Often in the Gardevoir EX archetype, that would revolve around the Psychic Embrace ability, which would let you attach as many Psychic Energy as you like from your discard pile to your Psychic Pokemon in a turn. In that deck, Mew was integral to get set up, sure, but Zacian V was the deck's heavy hitter. Storm Slash would deal 60 plus 30 damage for each Psychic Energy attached to Zacian, and since it had a very beefy 220 base HP, Gardevoir EX could slam a ton of energy there, so Zacian could eject anything from the game. This led to Gardevoir getting 2nd place at 2023 World and 2nd place at 2023 EUIC as well as having 4 in the top 8 at LAIC 2024. An absolutely mad deck, which Zacian and Mew helped greatly. The last super playable card I want to look at is very different to the offensive juggernauts that we have been looking at before, since Yveltal was the face of controlling decks. Oh boy, it was a bit of a mad lad. Craft Destruction would discard 3 special energy cards from your opponent's Pokemon. This would wreck Lugia V-Star decks and Mew V Max decks too, since they would both exclusively play only special energy. This meant Yveltal was in every controlling archetype right up until it rotated, like Sander Wojcik's top 4 NAIC deck for example. So with that run through of the best cards and Celebrations, that leaves the competitive total from the main set at 24%. And bear in mind, those playables are tier 1 playables as well, which will never be topped again, might I say. So the last pillar is collector value, and this is kind of where Celebrations falls down, I'll be honest, with the most expensive card in the set being a Charizard, shock, which currently sits at around $100 US, so not the highest. However, okay, so in terms of raw pricing, Celebrations might not be the heftiest of sets, but if you can look past that, what we have is a set that is by far the most competitive card for card of all time, and it's not even close, and a set that is the most fun to open for its hit rate, and a set that encapsulates the whole 30-year history of the Pokemon TCG by having cards from every era represented. And we even get to see old mechanics with new Pokemon, like the Greninja Gold Star or the Zacian Level X. That is one of the coolest things I've ever seen, and it really gets me thinking about how other Pokemon would look in older mechanics as well. In my opinion, that is enough for me to confidently say that Celebrations is the greatest Pokemon TCG set of all time, and I don't think it will ever get topped. If you made it this far and you enjoyed the video, why don't you consider liking the video and subscribing? It'd mean the world to me, quite honestly. And why don't you watch this video here, but I go through every Pokemon's most competitive card. Trust me, it's a fun one.